We're here with Edwin Alphonse, the senior controller at Ramp. I'm very excited today to discuss accounting, AI, and a bunch of industry related stuff. So, Edwin, welcomes. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was hoping you could start with just a little introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks you for having me. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently the senior controller at Ramp. I've been in this role for about 4 years when I joined the company in 2021. Before that, I worked at 3 different startups in similar role where I built accounting and finance team and financial operation and processes for all of these companies. And before that, I was an auditor for EY and PwC.
Awesome. 2 great firms. I worked at one. We work with another one here at Flowcast, so I love them both. I'm curious, as you reflect on your time in audit, how do you think that played into your role as you moved into industry and accounting?
That's quite an interesting question. Like I spent 10 years in auditing and I studied my career in Canada and worked different cities in Canada and also went to Grand Cayman where I did more audit and moved to the US with more audit. So I like to see myself as an auditor for life. I think like an auditor, I act like an auditor. In fact, my husband think I'm always auditing him, which is funny. It's always trust and verify for me. So I think like my audit mindset comes everywhere. Like when I'm building processes, when I'm building team, when I'm building reports, I'm always thinking like what will be audited, like what will the auditors think, like what should we be doing, how should we present it to be audit friendly, and just like always thinking about all of these audit assertions that we learn, like completeness, accuracy, like rights and obligation and everything like that. So I think for me, having that audit mindset has been extremely helpful because usually when I start my roles, the first task is to get the audit done. So I know what the auditors want. And because of that, I'm always able to lead successful audits with Big Four and make sure that the books, the corporate records are clean and audit friendly.
The audit seems like a catalyst for kind of scaling an accounting department oftentimes. So interesting you say that. So the first time audits are sort of when you come in to help get the ship in order. Is that a fair way to think about it?
Yes. They always call me when everything is messy and they're ready to get that first audit. So at that point, like in 2 of the companies, I was the first accountant at Circle and at Ramp. And my first role was to get the audits done.
How were the books closed before you joined?
That's a good question. They were not closed. So that's the easy answer here.
Is it like an outsourced firm is doing the work and then just kind of doing cash basis accounting?
Yes, like pretty much a cash accounting. And funny story at Ramp, when I started, they didn't even have account numbers. So I know like when you open like your books, like let's say like we were using like an accounting software. I'm not going to say which one. And
Okay.
I looked and there were no numbers in the accounts.
Yeah, let's not name names. I'm surprised you can even do that.
So the firms that were handling our books, they had a couple of accounts. They were doing like cash accounting, and they were not properly categorizing things. So my first responsibility as the first internal accountant, internal controller, was to clean these books, which I did, but after making sure I had an appropriate set of accounts with numbers, with mapping to what the executive wanted, to how we wanted to tell a financial story, and also making sure that I can explain the business objective to the auditors.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm usually the one that does the first audit, and the one that tried to get auditors. Like at Circle, Circle was still a cryptocurrency company, and in 2014, nobody was taking cryptocurrencies as customers on the audit side. So my role was to get auditors, my role was to get bankers, and my role was to get partners, and nobody wanted us. So that was like a really like interesting journey, but I embraced it. And like I said before, like toward that journey, like my ultimate goal is to make sure we can close a book, like do like a daily close or continuous close. We can provide information to all the stakeholders, most likely like the executive team, so they can make right decision. But also we can create the foundation for the company to scale. So that's with creating processes, that's with creating controls, but also creating a framework where all the financial operations can be built and support the growth of the company.
I will say, I just want to call back. I'm very impressed you still remember the audit assertions. I think you can still pass the CPA exam. Very
I
well done.
can.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. So you come in, you help get things cleaned up. You think about the operations and scaling it. Let's think about talent a little bit. So when you're going out to build and hire the team, what are some of those early hires you look for?
Like usually I'm the first controller. Like to have a really good senior accountant or accounting manager based on what we need.
And
And
is there a
and
background profile you look for there?
background, I'm a little biased against like Big Four. Like I want to have Big Four because I feel like if you have a Big Four, you do have the quality needed to deal with Big Four auditors on the other side.
Yeah.
But you also have the training and experience to communicate and be assertive and deal with different situations as well. So that's not saying that people from other accounting firms, they cannot do it. Of course they can do it, and I've hired people from different accounting firms as well. But because I came from the Big Four, it's always easier for me to relate with them. I like people with industry experience. So that's when like they've worked at different like startups before, either in similar role, either in junior role. So they know like the fast-paced environment. They know what to do, and they can like work independently. Like my team is fully remote at Ramp. Like I don't have time to macromanage. I don't have time to look behind your shoulder. Like I'm mostly on Slack most of the time. So I want someone that can manage their workload independently, and then that can also take initiatives. Because when you're working at a startup, like usually there's nothing built. So if you ask him, "Can I have this report?" My answer to you is like, "Go build it."
That attitude mentality is a difficult thing to interview for. Do you have any advice, any questions you like to ask that starts to dig at that kind of trait?
Yes, it can be difficult to build for, but one of the questions I always ask, like the candidate, like, give me an example of the processes you've built. Like, and it could be like something easy. Like some of them be like, "Oh, I built like a process about like paying the bills," and I'll be like, "What did you work with? What did you do? Like, give me like the different step that you had to go through. Like, did you have to work an approval flow? Did you have to explain that approval flow to someone?" So that's important. And then I like to make sure that my candidates are self-aware. And self-awareness is extremely important because you know how to make progress. You know what you do wrong, and you can also learn from that, from your past mistakes or past lessons. So I'll ask them like if they had to make any changes in their journey or like in a decision, what would that be? And you'll be surprised the type of answers that I usually get. And all of my candidates, they also do a technical accounting case. And that technical accounting case, the facts are similar to a current situation at Ramp or to previous situation we've gone to. So just to assess their judgment and assess their technical skills. Usually
Is it a
there's
gross
no
versus
right.
net decision?
Could be if it's like a revenue manager or technical accountant that we're trying to hire. Like gross and net is extremely important for us. So we do make sure they are properly vetted. And we have like a panel interview as well where they get to meet like different team members from different department because we want them to be able to work with cross-functional partners. And at the end, like based on the feedback we receive from the different interviewers, we're able to offer them a job.
So you're dipping into other functions? Like, are they interviewing with members of the customer? What other departments are they chatting with?
So depending on the role, like for example, right now we do have an AP specialist role. And that person is extremely important to us because this is the person that's the power user in Ramp. And Ramp, as you know, we finance automation, expense management tool. So they will be spending most of their time in Ramp. And because we dug through our own product, they need to be able to give feedback to product, give feedback to engineering. And as such, we do involve engineering and product people. into the interview process.
That's awesome. Well, on the Ramp note, so Ramp, super innovative company, making really big waves out there. Some very cool marketing campaigns. As a golf fan and a football fan, you've done some very cool stuff. But focusing on accounting here, you think there's anything unique at Ramp that kind of stands out about the accounting operations that's a little more innovative than maybe what you saw at some of your audit clients?
Yeah, it's definitely. I think the focus of Ramp, like I'm the first customer, which I like, but the first focus is to save time and money. So we do apply that philosophy in our own accounting operation as well. And whenever it's time to like make a new hire or it's time to invest in a new tool, the first question we ask ourselves, what is the best resource allocation here? Can we automate this? Or do we have to create a process where we need to add another accountant or we need to add another tool? Like for me, like my goal is if I can automate it and solve that problem forever, I'll do that. But sometimes I cannot automate it because it takes time to create the automation, or it takes time to get the report because you will need to audit that report to be able to rely on it. So that's at the point I'm like, okay, maybe I need to outsource this, or maybe there's an advisor that can help me, or maybe there's a tool that can help us. But our first instinct is always to automate, because when you automate, you're saving time, but you're also saving money in the long run.
Mm-hmm. So the mentality is like, I think about Ramp, I don't think you're going to get any smaller. I think you're going to continue to grow as an organization, get more complicated. With that, there's more challenges around accounting. So the mentality is, can we scale the organization with maybe the same size accounting department and see if we can layer solutions in or tools to help us scale with the headcount we have today? If you're not able to make that happen, then maybe you get a headcount opened or you think about outsourcing it. But in general, you want to scale with what you have. Yeah,
exactly. In general, we try to scale with what we have. We are a team of 7. Like, so right now there's like 7 of us in accounting, including me.
Yeah, 7 in accounting at a $13 billion valuation.
It is crazy. I wonder, are we doing it? And I will be honest, like we prioritize. Like we're not doing everything. Like I have a long list of goals, and from my list of goals, I'm prioritizing on what's important. And what we should be doing. Like the rest, like we put it, like we try to delegate, we try to figure out how to get it done, but on a priority, like we make sure we use all the resources that we have available to us.
I've heard strategies about prioritization at the end of the day and making those tough decisions. As you look at the things you want to do within the accounting department, I think this will be interesting for the audience. What are some of the things that you want to do, but you just cannot prioritize and they're sort of like nice to haves for you at this point?
Oh, I would like to build like a world-class tax team.
Okay.
Like, I don't think we're ready for that. I would like to have like the proper IP capitalization process. I'm not ready for that yet. So right now I'm prioritizing and building my revenue accounting processes. I'm prioritizing building all the reports that I need and all the automation I need to have a good close, to have good reconciliation, to have good reporting. So it's important to know what can be done, and then some processes can wait with time.
And so in the meantime, tax, you can outsource that, work for some consultants, and then maybe as you get closer to an IPO, it makes more sense to pull it in-house because that'll actually be cheaper to have a person in-house doing it.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about the current state of accounting then, because the fact that you want to automate first does ease some of the challenges around the talent gap that's out there. But you do hire and you're trying to find an AP specialist right now. So at Flowcast, we talk a lot about the talent gap. I think it's pretty broadly discussed in the accounting profession. How are you dealing with that, and are you seeing that struggle?
I see it, I hear it. We've been extremely blessed at Ramp. So whenever we have a job posting, we have a lot of candidates applying, which is great. I think the brand is really strong, so that's good for the team and that's good for us. I think this is something like the accounting profession has to deal with. And it comes from like the fact that accounting has not properly been branded in the past couple of years. That's what I think. And I feel like we do for rebranding. And that rebranding is like about making accounting cool again. I don't know if accounting was ever cool. Like for me, accounting was cool. I still think I'm a cool accountant. But some people, maybe young people, they don't think like that. So we need to rebrand accounting and have like the young people starting college like go into that profession. I know for 2024, 2025, it seems like there is like an increase in the number of graduate that wants to study accounting, which is great. But I do feel like with like most people, some people retiring, we're going to have a little gap. And that's why it's important to have the right tools. So that's why like tools like Flowcast, like Rep, they are here to help accountants. So we can focus on what's important, like all the silly work, categorization, journal entry, reconciliation, like tools can get them done. So we live in time for accountants to do like high level work. And by doing high level work, they're going to have more value. They're going to increase their strategic presence. They're going to be able to be more vocal in the room. I do feel like in the past couple of years, finance has been more desirable than accounting. And because of that, like when you start your career, you make more money as a finance professional than you make as an accounting professional. So if we give in these opportunities to use tools and help them enhance their skills to a young accountant, I do feel like that gap is going to be closed. And I do feel like people are going to feel more empowered to become accountants, and they will want to be accountants. Because who doesn't want to be an accountant? You can work everywhere. You can see everything. Like you have like a full view of everything. Like I'm a nosy person, so I like as an accountant, I get to see like how much we pay in each vendor, like where the money goes, like what the story is. So I do feel like with accounting, there's a lot of power because you have that knowledge. And now with the tools that we have now, we're able to use that knowledge to be insightful. We're able to use that knowledge to provide like a good decision making. We're able to use the data that we have to create value added like decisions for the company.
Yeah.
So I'm extremely optimistic about accounting.
Good. Well, we're trying everything we can at Flowcast to help solve this problem. I think there's a branding issue for sure. I don't know if it was ever cool, but there was always job security and certainty in it, and it wasn't so bad that you wanted to quit. But I when I go on my rants about this, I feel like on a day-to-day basis, accountants aren't actually doing what they majored in. And the major and like the discipline of accounting itself to me is really interesting and really fun. Like it's like a puzzle you're trying to solve, the balance sheet, make sure everything reconciles, think about how guidance applies to this. And it's a formula, it's a puzzle, you're problem solving. And if you're doing the fun stuff, I actually enjoy it. Like people weren't listening to it before, but you and I were having a fun discussion around revenue recognition. And we weren't talking about, oh, here's how I transition the information from Excel into NetSuite and book this and it was like what's the merits of gross versus net and what's right for our business, or how long should an implementation be recognized over, what's the period of usefulness, blah blah blah. And those are the more interesting parts that I think if that was actually the day-to-day job and you had technology doing that more mundane stuff,
the boring
like you could get Yeah, or at least we stop people from leaving the job as much as they are right now. You know, maybe someone who's a sophomore in college doesn't get that, but at least we can keep the people who are in the roles right now.
Exactly, because I do feel like we get to see everything in accounting. It's just like, how do we use that knowledge? How do we use that vision? And I do think like with the tools that we currently working on, like Flowcast, Ramp, and some other tools, like there will be this opportunity for accountants, but they have to be open to it and they have to learn and they have to reframe the story. Like we are the best position to tell that financial story because we control the data. We have the data. And I do feel like with everything that's happening with AI automation, this is like a really good time to take a hold of that story and just like be the master of our own destiny now.
So let's transition into that. It's top of mind for everyone. AI and agents are certainly changing accounting. From your lens, you know, you're someone who's right in the middle of the tech scene here. How do you see a change in the profession?
I think it's a change in the way we're working. A lot of people think like they're going to be replacing accountants. Maybe like some bookkeeping jobs tasks are going to be replaced with AI agents, with automation.
hmm
But I do think like accountants are still going to be useful. They're still going to be needed because they will need to make like these big judgmental decisions that just like the one we were discussing about, like how do you recognize revenue?
hmm
Or do you value intangible asset? Or do you tell a financial story of a company? And accountants, like we are the owner of truth because we have the data and we also have this set of rules and rules and standards that we apply with US GAAP, with IFRS, and all the standards that we have. And because of that, we speak the language of business. Like the stock market is still going to use like financial statement. Like people still going to use a financial statement to make like decisions about what to invest, what to sell, and everything. So ultimately, we have that control.
Yeah, and can I layer onto that?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you also have the context behind the numbers.
Yes.
You're in the middle of the company. You know what's going on and why these numbers are producing that. So it's another fun part of it.
Yeah, it's a fun problem to have. And I do think with AI, we're going to do that more and better. So I think accountants, like the accountants that don't use AI, they're probably going to be left behind because they will be like integrated somewhere. But the one that use AI, they're going to be powerful and they're going to do like better work. And I do think with AI agent, at Ramp, we use like a lot of AI into like to do categorization, draw entries, approval flows. Like we also have the intelligence in the decisioning of what get flags or not in terms of like of spend program. And that helps. So my accounting team doesn't have to spend time on this. They spending their time like making sure that revenue flows make sense. They're spending time working with like product and engineering and giving customers better products. They're spending time with sales, explaining how we like let's say like we just invested that much money in a Super Bowl ad. Like they have the data, they know like what was the return on investment on that ad. So they're working with the strategic finance and FP&A team to help them understand the return on investment of that big Super Bowl ad that we did, for example.
I'm picturing going to the CMO and saying, "What's the ROI on the Saquon Barkley ad?" And being like, "Accounting, get out of my office. We can't." That's not how it works with brand campaigns.
I know.
Is that about how that discussion went?
Exactly. We know how much money we spent. So, and then we're going to know how much we got in sales and pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important.
You will be able to attribute that?
I think so. I think we,
nice.
if you structured your data right, if you have a good chart of accounts, like you can do that. Like I think one of my interesting discussion with FP&A, it's always like they always want more information and they're always asking me for more accounts so we can track everything.
Okay. They want that granularity for forecasting?
Exactly. Yeah. They want that granularity. And I do provide it to them because I'm like, you know what? Like we are the beginning of everything. And if the beginning is right, the end is going to be right as well.
Mm-hmm. Makes perfect. Do you view finance as kind of your customer?
Yes, they're like customer number one because they use the data to do like their forecast, their operating model, to present, to get investors. So finance is customer number one, and their customer, they also a partner because they have sometimes like they know what's going to happen. Like whereas like we have the past and the present to deal with. So I use them a lot just to know, I can tell that story because if I don't know what the expectations are, I cannot do like good journal entries. I cannot book properly. I cannot create the right financial statement, the right P&L. So I use them to give me that guidance, but they also use my numbers to create that guidance as well. So it's a kind of circle. Like we need each other, they need me, I need them. So I think like using that approach, like it's been extremely successful at Ramp.
Cool. A second customer of yours is going to be the audit team. I hate to go back to audit, but I do want to touch on it for a minute with AI here. I'm curious if you've had conversations with your auditors about AI, or maybe if your product team has thought about AI and how that ultimately will be audited at the end of the year. This is something definitely top of mind for me. So any thoughts here?
Yeah, this is top of mind for me. And I don't think there's like any audit guidance on how to deal with AI. Like maybe not yet. So
There's not yet.
Yeah, maybe not yet. So we're currently going to like a 2024 audit. And part of this 2024 audit, like we had to explain a lot of automation that we did with the auditors.
Mhm.
Like for example, when we have a new product, like we embed our accounting entries to the new product and create like some kind of ledger.
Okay.
So every edge case is mapped to a GL account. So we work with our engineering team, we work with our product team, and we try to map all the instances to the different GL. So at the end of the month, we have an automated report coming up from our core data structure. So we did that for 24. And we were trying to explain that to the auditors, and they were open to it. Like the beginning, they were like, "What?" but we had to create the audit work papers for them. Like we had to
Oh,
go
wow.
show them, yeah, like we had to go show them the code. We had to go give them the mapping of every edge cases. We have to go like do it the manual way and have the reports run automatically and show them that there were no differences. So it
So you
worked
were
well.
so you were recreating the work that the technology had done and then providing that to the auditors saying, here's
Yes.
how it works, here's some sampling. Did they dig in and do further sampling from there, or they were just happy
Of
with
course they
the work
did.
papers?
Of course they did, like because they don't want to rely on us.
I was gonna say, okay, I'm curious where that was going.
Yes, but we created the methodology for them, and they were quite happy because and they brought in their IT team, and their IT team reviewed the code, had conversation with our InfoSec and IT team, and they were satisfied. So I do believe that at some point, like auditing is going to catch up with all of this advancement. They're already using like Copilot. They're already using like their own tools on the tax side and audit side, but they will need to audit the code behind AI, the code behind all the automation as well, just to be comfortable with it. And I'm just thinking about it, like as an auditor, like whenever you had some ITGC was like IT general control, I don't know what they call them now. Like you just do a test of one. And always a test of one is better than a test of 25 or 400, whatever they have to, like the simple methodology.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that will be like a good saving for the auditors and for everyone involved. So I welcome the day where audit is truly automated. You don't have to do like down entry testing. You don't have to do all of this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we at Flowcast, we think a lot about moving away from a substantive audit into more of an IT focused audit. And how do you get to that test of one? That's in some ways the holy grail of audit prep is only having to do a test of one. As we're talking through it now, I'm thinking about like the future of audit. If all of a sudden it's moving away from substantive into IT, there's more IT people that are being hired by audit. Perhaps that frees up more of the accounting backgrounds to not go through audit and instead go directly to accounting. What do you think? I'm literally thinking on the fly right here. Do you think that's a way this could play out?
I don't think so. I think the technical accounting side is always going to be there. Like, because when you audit the financial statement, there's still like, I don't know, 20 pages of notes on equity. And like these notes on equity.
Yeah.
Like the auditors will have to think about it. They'll have to think about gross net. They'll have to think about leases. They'll have to think about all of this. So at some point there will still be an accounting mindset because there's a lot of judgment in accounting. And with judgment, maybe you need like, I don't know, like regular accounting auditors to look at that. Like they will probably still be all in the national office, maybe. And maybe you will just have all the IT people will be like national office and IT people. And then they both work with each other. I don't know, but maybe that's
Yeah, maybe like it could be the mix. I reflect on my time. What my public client, for example, we had about 15 what you'd call like substantive auditors, right? Accounting background auditors, and we had an IT team of 3 or 4 IT auditors who were with us. Is the future a little more flipped? Maybe it's more like 10 to 15 IT auditors and just a couple accounting
I do
auditors
think
who are more
so.
focused on the judgment. And if that does happen, then the big 4 are all of a sudden not hiring as many accounting graduates. And does that open up a new pathway for them to move into industry directly out of college instead?
Yeah, it could be.
That's-
I do see like more IT auditors, but these IT auditors, they will need to understand accounting. So the
Yeah.
regular corporate accountants, like maybe they'll be like easier for them to transition to the corporate world like easily since they will not go to like, I don't know, the auditing pathway. Even though I do think like auditing is a good way to learn accounting, because you know what the expectations are. Like I also do feel like you need to work in a regular company to know how accounting is.
I could not agree more. This is one of the things that terrifies me about AI is if it's I feel like the old guy saying this, but back in my day, I used to go through spreadsheets
Yeah.
and manually do everything. And
Yeah.
when you are struggling through work, that's a great way to learn and understand why you do things and how they should work. I feel like we're heading into an era where we're going to be missing a lot of that context because tech's
Yes.
going to be doing that grunt work. So there is some positive to that in the
Yeah.
trenches having to work a bunch and learn it. Like, do you have any thoughts on how we can plug that knowledge gap and get that
Oh, yeah.
combination of someone, they understand the weeds, but then they have the technology to be able to automate it? I don't know. I'm struggling with this one.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like we're going to miss like a whole generation of people that knows like the A, B, C, D. Like they will just go to Z directly because they'll have AI doing the work for them, but they won't know how to do like all these different steps. So I think for this, like we still have to make sure there's a certain level of training and understanding that needs to be done. And maybe that's what people can learn in school. Maybe that's what they can learn in their, I don't know, first year working in a corporate setting, but they need to understand accounting. Like you need to understand like how to balance the book like manually. So when AI does something, like you'd be like, oh, that's not right, because AI is not going to be right all the time.
Yeah.
Like there are still going to be errors, hallucinations, and everything. So you need to understand what's happening behind the scenes, behind the codes, and you can validate. Like again, just go back to trust but verify. And like you can trust AI, but you have to verify that it's doing a good job. So if you don't know what you're verifying, like how do you know the trust should be there? So I
That
think and then for me, that's why like whenever we have a new hire, we give them the technical accounting case, because we want to make
mhm.
sure they do understand accounting. Like we want to make sure they can prepare a balance sheet, they can prepare a P&L. And this still needs to balance. And you'll be surprised. Some people like they don't understand that the P&L flow into the balance sheet, which doesn't make sense to me. But but you imagine like if AI is doing all the work, maybe in a couple of years people won't even know how to prepare like a balance sheet, which I
that's
feel will be a big miss.
that's what and also part of why I'm concerned about this. I'm going to take a little bit of an aside here. This might even get cut from the podcast. I don't know if this will be interesting enough, but my mom runs the outsourced CFO
Hmm.
firm, and I hear her complain nonstop around how bookkeepers who don't know accounting book journal entries the wrong way. Just like, oh, they flipped a debit into a credit or miscategorized something, and it's purely from a lack of understanding the big picture, right? So like along the lines of what you're saying, they don't know how a P&L and balance sheet are things that live together and are
Yes.
combined, effectively combined things. um, that's why it's so top of mind for me, and I just see it with AI, and I'm worried that's going to get very acute, and it's probably not a problem that's going to hit us until maybe like 5 years from now,
Hmm.
because that's to flush through the system, right? And we're sort of dependent on education to keep up with it,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
which
so
that terrifies me.
I do feel so, because I think like the theory of accounting, I learned it in school. And
Yeah.
and I was able to like I had a regular accounting job. Like I work at the accounting department at my university when I went to school. Like I work full time
Oh,
during the
okay.
summer and I work part time during the school year. So I knew how to do accounting just by like working with the AP team, working with the AR team, working with the grant team. So I understood like all the cash flows to the different statement. But a lot of people don't know, and if you only have an audit background, you just know like how to audit and review. You've never done it. And then when you see your work, that's when you know like how to really do like a bank reconciliation, how to really do like a interest roll forward and all of these things that people have to do. So I think with AI, like the danger is like AI will do the work and people won't understand what's happening behind, and if there are errors, they won't catch it. But I do feel like it's an opportunity for like our education system to make sure that they understand debit credit, they understand like the different statement, they understand like how to prepare notes, make sure everything flows and tie. And then again, once they join a company, the company should make sure it test them on that. Like the same way, like right now we want to test people on AI and see if they like AI curious. Because we want people to adopt AI the same way. At some point, we'll have to test them on basic accounting knowledge, or maybe I don't know, basic finance knowledge as well. Because if
Mhm.
we don't want like robots, like we want people that understand what's behind everything.
The fact that you did accounting in college is probably one of the best courses you took.
Yep.
It probably helped you so much with the context in the classroom once
hmm
you left your job and went to the classroom. I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, yeah, that was good because I saw like the behind the scene of the university, which was quite interesting.
But yeah, the insight you get from having the books open to you is so much.
hmm
It's so much fun. It's so cool to see what's going on at the business or the
hmm
university at large. That's an underappreciated part of it. I know personally, any audit job I got on, I wanted to do payroll. That's just a
Why did
fun.
you
That's
want to
just a
do
fun account to do.
payroll?
You
And
know,
did you
see what
always
everyone makes.
select the CFO? Did you always pick the CFO as your sample selection?
What is my what's my future going to look like? It was generally like, okay, how's the accounting manager doing? How's the controller doing? How's
Yeah.
the CFO doing? And then yeah, I never had the CEO vision at the time, so I
Oh,
wasn't
why?
checking that
Why?
far.
I always pick the CEO, CFO, and the controller. Like it was
Yeah.
random, but I always pick them randomly.
It was random. They just happened to, you got to pick the top comp packages in there. Make sure you're taking a look at everything. Capitalizing the jet properly. You got to make sure all
hmm
that stuff's hitting the balance sheet the right way.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. That was fun. And I
Um,
remember when I studied, like they would just come and give us these big payroll files. And then they give us like stickies, and then you had to pick with the highlighter, pick your sample selection, and then go to the HR department and ask for the offer letters and agreements. So that was fun.
yeah. That was always the most secretive account. You find yourself in some room
Mhm.
with no windows, with printouts and the HR coordinator, and yeah, totally. You get the raised packets, all that kind of stuff. Good
Exactly.
times.
That was a good time. Now we don't even have paper. Like I'm running my audit with no paper. Whereas like I remember when I started, they just put me in a room close to the kitchen and we have all of these big binders and like
Hmm.
full like rooms of papers and everything.
Well, I'm very happy to hear you're doing a paperless audit. You are a Flowcast customer, so I'm happy to hear we're not printing out reconciliations or anything like that. On that note, I want to pivot into Flowcast a little bit. One of our big things is, and you and I have been having a nerdy conversation about accounting here, but by accounts for accounts is really important for us. I'm curious, as you've worked with us, used our product, like is that something that's kind of shown through from you, and is that something that matters to you?
I think it does matter to me because I want to make sure you understand what I want. I think that's a big difference with Flowcast. Like Flowcast, you've built it the way accountants or maybe auditors have seen it, so it's really familiar. So just like
Mhm.
going to the checklist, it's familiar. Like we recognize like the accounts, we recognize the procedures. We know how to attach like working papers. We know the number in works, and we know what the intent is. So it makes it like extremely easy to communicate these working papers to our auditors because they understand it. Like at the end of the day, like I hate to say that, but we work for the auditors. Like it's either like financial auditors, either the IRS, either someone. At some point, someone is going to audit the books.
Mhm.
And the fact that the way Flowcast organize it, it's really easy to just like send the file to auditors. It's really easy to do the appropriate documentation on the lead sheet because it's already configured properly. So I appreciate
And it's
that
a
like a lot.
I was gonna say polarizing question. I've heard opposite reactions to it. Do you have your auditors log into Flowcast, or do you prefer to send them the information?
Oh my God. Oh, you're trying to get me in trouble.
No,
Uh,
no, it's an
I
interesting
don't like.
philosophical discussion. Yeah,
Yes, I feel like I would like my auditors to be in it because it makes it easier. But at the same time, I like to have full control as to what they're saying. So I'd rather send them the information.
yeah. I think that's a fair argument. I've seen it either way. I mean, I'm sort of the yeah. We'll give them what they ask for. That's how
hmm
that's how you're gonna keep
hmm
life the easiest, keep it simplest,
Exactly, exactly.
not have that scope creep.
Exactly, because like they will go around and look at things and there will just like more questions. And with
Hmm.
questions is more answers, and with more answers, more questions, just like a loop that never ends. Was like if you just give them what they need, you're pretty much done.
Yeah, and then overage bills.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I just go reflecting on your comment around kind of doing some mock procedures for them around how you're using AI and technology and how to audit it, and then allowing them to sample from there. That feels like a great way to work with an audit team.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. It is. It
Um,
is. I think Deloitte, we use Deloitte as an auditor, and they've been extremely great partners. And they're great partners because they open. to experiencing new way
Mhm.
of working. They're open to us building a ledger, an accounting ledger. They're open to bringing their IT audit team to understand our code. And they're extremely appreciative of the work that we've done because we're saving them time as well. Like they don't
Yeah.
have to pick like sample of 25 or more. Once we have the process automated, they can just again limit their sample and just understand the coding and the algorithm behind the reports.
That's all right. Very cool. Good way to keep your auditors happy and hopefully have a good relationship there. Um, all right, we are reaching the end of the road here. I'm curious, just as we reflect on the industry, I want to take it back to a little bit high level. Like, what is top of mind for you over the next 5 to 10 years with I guess not just your personal career, but just how you see like accounting going, and what advice would you offer students or maybe staff or senior accountants to on what they can do over the next 5 to 10 years to kind of have a great career in accounting?
Yes, I think like the advice that I'll offer like to students and new graduates is just to be open. Be open and learn as much as you can. Like we are at an inflection point now where with AI, with automation, like the way we used to work is changing. We also at the inflection point where the number of accountants is declining because we have so many like older, more mature professionals retiring. So I see all of this as opportunities to enter the profession, opportunities to take as much space as possible, opportunities to become like um, really important partners in every organization. Like the role of accountants is not being removed or being like eliminated by AI. If anything, our role is even more important now because we will have to audit this AI. So make sure if you study in your career that you learn the skills that are important. Like you learn SQL, you are like Power DB, you learn how to do a good query, you learn how to write prompt, and you keep up to date with the new AI
Mhm.
tools that are coming into the market. Like me, I have to rebrand myself. I have to re-educate myself. And I spent a lot of time on YouTube, like trying to understand how to
Yeah.
create agent and everything because you need to do that. If you're
Mhm.
not doing that, you're going to stay behind. So I think it's a really great time to be an accountant now, and it's a great time to learn and just like see how you can improve your skills, see how you can be like more strategic and be more insightful. For myself personally, I've been an accountant for 20 years. I enjoy building things. I enjoy building processes. But I'm also enjoying learning more about finance and being like a good partner to the executive in my team and helping them build like financial operations. So so it's just not only accounting, like closing the books. It's also like helping a company scale, and I help companies scale by creating like processes, building tools, and solving problems. And that's the core of an accounting professional is like we solve problems and we provide trust.
Mhm.
So I cannot be more optimistic about accounting. I cannot be more like better, like happier to be an accountant. And I've enjoyed it, like because I like to say I'm nosy. I like to know what's going on, and there's no better view than the view of accounting and knowing where everything goes and how everything is organized.
Could not agree more. I mean, I think the language of business, we get the insight, we know what's going on. And then I think technology is going to allow the job to be more fun going
Yeah.
forward. And great time to think about entering the profession and doing the fun part we were talking about earlier, more the problem solving, the puzzle, building operations, making sure you're
Hmm.
scalable, helping the company grow and do it in an efficient way. It's fun stuff. There's so much going on in the world. But yeah, you talk about the need to continue learning. I think that's the big kind of mentality shift because for us in accounting historically it's been more like guidance changes come along and we need to understand the guidance, and that's the learning is more around guidance, and that's from the government moves much slower than the tech world, and now the tech world is what's
So it is
driving a lot of the
moving
change, so we just
faster.
have to be up on pace. And YouTube, I don't get it. Some people still laugh about learning on YouTube. I think that's a dumb response to it. YouTube's an incredible resource,
It
and especially
is.
for
It
staying up to
is.
speed on AI, like absolutely people I don't know, you'll probably agree with me, but big piece of advice, like hop on YouTube, start
Mhm.
following some of these AI resources and stay up to speed on it, because that's how you're gonna, not just be relevant in the field, but I think that's how you become a super valuable accountant, is if you know the tech plus the guidance, all of a sudden you're a unique skill set and can really add value to an organization.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I have no shame into going to YouTube and just like recreating what they're teaching. Like sometimes like they summarize like a long course into like 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
while you're doing work, you can just listen to that YouTube and just like go back and execute on it.
YouTube
Like
University.
it's kind of interesting because some of these things they're not teaching you in class. Like most of the AI classes now, like just about prompting. And sometimes you need
Mhm.
more. Like you need to do technical things. Like you need the agent. You need to know to like do like all the different situational prompt and everything. And there's no better place now than YouTube. Like I wish like there was like an accounting like AI class or finance AI class where you sit down for like a week and learn all the new tricks. But nobody knows it because these tricks, like every day, there are new tricks. And the best way
Yeah.
to learn is to learn like from YouTube, like people that have done the knowledge, the research, and they can condense it in this short form. Just use that, and be like the differentiator now.
Are there any specific resources you like that you would recommend for the audience?
Uh, I do follow some YouTube. I've been like following classes from Section. That's a company. They do like AI classes. Um,
Okay.
I do listen to a lot of like podcasts as well. I try a lot of tools. Like we have like access to like GPT, Claude, and Perplexity at Ramp. So I would like even for my own pleasure, like let's say I'm doing a 606 analysis or anything like that, I'll try to upload the same documents, the same prompt into the different tools like GPT, Claude, and Topic and see what the answers are. Like see what's
Yeah.
different and see like which one gives me the best and I'll try to change and have different version of that as well. So I think the goal is just to experiment. Like right now it's experiment and tuition phase. It's like knowledge, like try to learn as much as you can and not be scared of it. I feel like a lot of accountants are a little bit hesitant about that. That's normal because we're extremely conservative. We like consistency. But
Yeah.
at some point we kind of have to just like, okay, be curious about it and use it for the best. It's not going to be perfect. Like I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect, but that's why it's important to know what the outcome should be. So when you get a bad outcome, you can be like, something is wrong here. Or do I change it to get to the right outcome?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to need a human in the loop to make sure
Mhm.
AI is doing things the right way. And I think a lot of the fear from the accounting community comes from not knowing what the role is going to
Yes.
look like in the future. And so I hope we've done some service to painting a little vision of what that role is going to look like. Where accounting knowledge is going to be very necessary,
Mhm.
and then combine it with AI knowledge, just being up to speed on tech and being genuinely curious. That feels like the future of the profession, and that's a little more exciting than what we have today. Would you agree?
I agree with that. And if you don't know the rules, create your own rules.
Yep, there you go. That's great way to force the issue.
Be the rule setter,
Yeah.
be the influencer here, and just tell people what things should be done. Like educate your
Y-
auditors, educate like your professors, educate people. Like, be the rule setter. So that's why I think it's a good opportunity to be like influence, to be the influencer here, to be the rule setter, to be like the advocate here, because it's like a really like virgin ground now.
Well said. Well, I know you're on spring break right now, so I appreciate you I want to let you go, get back to spring break, and have a good time. Thank you so much for taking the time, Edwin. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me. That was such an interesting discussion. Thank you.
That was fun. I had a good time.
Me too.
Enjoy the beach.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.